The effects acoustic, the influence of sound on a hearing-impaired human body. The goal of this inquiry is to expand the research and provide details and evidence from professional researchers regarding sound as influence to prove that non-hearing impaired and hearing impaired people have same influence of sound. Although hearing impaired people have the same perception as non-hearing impaired, the effects of sound as influence outweigh this difference due to the development of auditory pattern recognition's psychological impacts and overall human reactions and behaviors toward sounds. Sound designers use adequate acoustic materials and speakers in an architectural space in order to improve the quality of sound, minimize the impact in psychology, and increase positive reactions and behavior in people. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, there are many grades of impairment depending on the audiometric ISO value that is realized for each person during hearing screening. WHO states that non-hearing impairment includes no impairment corresponds to the audiometric ISO value that goes to 25 decibel or better, or the slight impairment that is 26-40 decibel. Whereas the WHO states that profound impairment is 81 decibel or greater, for which a person is unable to hear and understand. The solution for this situation is the implementation of cochlear implant, CIA. The severe impairment pertains to 61-80 decibel, while the moderate impairment pertains to 41-60 decibel. WHO classified as a disabling hearing impaired the moderate, severe and profound impairment. It is important to understand the way that the levels of sound that humans can receive through the ear, hence, have an influence in their body. First, the development of auditory pattern recognitions. The auditory system allows people the ability to associate and recognize sounds in order to understand the meaning of something heard. The process of the sound to the brain, Warren 2008, explains. The auditory system starts with a sound that travels as a wave through the air to the ear. Then, sound waves turns into vibration in the middle ear. Warren 2008 states that the auditory brain receives the vibration and converts this into nerve impulses that alert the brain in response to a sound. This is where humans have a perception and reaction, because the brain interprets the sounds and gives meaning to the information. For instance, people who are deaf have no auditory perception, but if they have CI they are able to perceive the sound as the non-hearing impaired people. For a broad understanding, the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, NIDC, 2014 states that the CI can give a deaf person a useful representation of sounds in the environment. NIDC explains how CI works. Cochlear implants bypass damaged portions of the ear and directly stimulate the auditory nerve. Signals generated by the implant are sent by way of the auditory nerve to the brain, which recognizes the signals as sound. People with CI are able to recognize sounds in their surroundings and establish conversations. As NIDC points out, studies have also shown that eligible children who receive a cochlear implant at a young age develop language skills at a rate comparable to children with normal hearing, and many succeed in mainstream classrooms. Users with CI have the same auditory pattern as non-hearing impaired people, and sound has the same influence on their bodies of both groups. The CI apply for deaf users from birth and adults who have lost their auditory ability gradually because of factors such as genetic, disease, or environmental trauma. NIDC explains, people who had past experience in sound, they learn to associate the signal provided by an implant with sounds they remember. This is because they have developed the brain auditory to a point where they are able to recognize the sounds. The influence of sound depends on the development of auditory pattern recognitions. Espinosa, Verens and Watson, 1989, states the auditory sensations, or perceptions, exhibit considerable plasticity and depend strongly on experience, attention, and learning. Each person has different development of brain's auditory because all people are able to hear rather than understanding the meaning of the sound. It is important to train the brain with skills and abilities of a hearing impaired to listen, understand, and discriminate the auditory information. Second, the psychological impacts. The Mayo Clinic, 2014, explains that the brain is the main center of the nervous system and contains billions of nerve cells arranged in patterns that coordinate thought, emotion, behavior, movement, and sensation. The psychology in the brain has an important role over the human body because of the capacity to control the emotions and external influence. Professionals have found evidence that suggests the brain has a strong relationship to psychology because of the direct connection with the nervous system through neurons. Psychology influences sound processing, and people have total control over the auditory brain to get the important information and ignore the background sounds. Here is the image in which explains that ear can pick out one voice among background sounds, converting this into a loud sound while the rest of sound is diminished. Grondick et al. 2010. The reaction of both group are same when they receive high sound level, S, and it lead to disorientation, disturbance, and annoyance. Silence may be a distress for non-hearing impaired because it may generate anxiety, since they need is to be aware of sound that might happen suddenly. The non-hearing impaired generally live with small sound around them all the time, so their body does not react precipitously. The CI users are comfortable in silence, but tend to be more anxious to hear unknown sounds. Silence is not the same experience for non-hearing impaired and hearing impaired. Positive and negative situations may cause impacts psychologically by induce a nerve blockage of incoming auditory information. This may lead the person to have a trauma or state of shock. A person that does not have psychological impact is able to be more open and receive a wide range of auditory information. Generally, psychological impact in humans have a powerful effect on influencing perception of sounds. Lastly, humans' reaction and behavior. The central nervous system is responsible for the reactions and behavior of people when facing such events. When human bodies react, the nerves travel to the brain to interpret the feelings, and then experience the emotions in order to behave toward the event. Unfortunately, the hearing impaired cannot react toward such sounds because they do not receive auditory input. However, after CI, they are able to receive the sounds. The researchers have found that after the CI surgery, users have improved their quality of life and behavior after the influence of sounds. Balsifer et al. 2003 point out diaresis studies have reported improved behavior and visual attention after cochlear implantation, as well as significant improvements in nonverbal and visual motor functioning. The auditory therapy is an important complement to improve its effectiveness and get a better reaction and behavior when receiving influence sounds. The exposure to sounds above 150 decibel can cause hearing loss. Even though that hearing impaired people cannot hear, their ear can be affected as same as non-hearing impaired because the intensity of sound affect the structure of the inner ear. The CI users react and behave in the same manner as non-hearing impaired people toward the influence of sound. For example, CI users that are involved in a jazz concert, they have positive reaction because their brains send a signal in which relax their body. However, if CI users are in a club with loud music, their brains send a signal alerting a possible danger to their ear. Grondick et al. 2010 states, continuous exposure to high noise levels causes a degree of temporary deafness in most of people, and that long periods of such exposure can produce permanent hearing impairment. Experts attest that CI users have received positive reactions when the sounds has influenced on their body, because the sounds allow them to know what is happening in their environment. Currently, the advance of technologies has contributed to reduce the hearing impaired problem due to the cochlear implantation. It has been clear that specialists strongly believe that hearing-impaired and non-hearing people have the same influence over their bodies, except there may be other factors such as development of auditory pattern recognition, psychological impacts, and overall human reactions and behaviors. Data confirms that to prevent negative impact in human psychology, to enhance pattern recognition, and to increase positive behaviors and reactions, it is important that sound designers use adequate materials in an enclosed space to absorb sounds and improve the quality of sound. Thus, there is no difference between the CI users and non-hearing impaired humans, because the CI users are constantly interacting and exchanging with the sounds in order to more like a non-hearing impaired person.